Eric and Shane. Woo.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Well, thanks for coming. This is kind of a really cool conference for us because we're kind of local. Got a pretty intimate relationship with the Olympics here. We've been doing research here. I've been doing research here since 1985. And it's a fantastic area, and it's an honor to speak in front of local people here. So we actually have a research property not far from here down towards Lake Crescent. And we've been doing research here a long time. And in my opinion, I think the Olympics, the Olympic Peninsula here, probably is one of the hottest spots for Sasquatch that there is. So they are absolutely here, and it's a fun place to research, beautiful mountain range. So I guess Shane's leaving. So just a quick background on the Olympic project. It's going on 15 years old. When we initially started the Olympic project, it started out with myself and Rich Germeau, who's also speaking today, and it was a comprehensive camera track project. And at one time we had upwards of 60 cameras deployed through a lot of the ridges, mostly ridge lines, predatory travel routes, elk calving areas, things of that nature, all the way from the Quinault, the Elwha, the Salduck, just all over the Olympics. It was very aggressive. We had quite a team that went to very remote places doing camera work. And over the years it's evolved into what we're doing now. And so we still have some cameras deployed, but we're pretty much in the process right now of just collecting as much data and knowledge as we can about the Bigfoot subject. So if the species is ever verified, we're going to be able to put forth a big body of data, things that we've learned, habits and patterns and a little bit of predictability, things of that nature. But anyways, today we're here to talk about the NEST project, which is in the Olympic project. There is 6 years ago, I received a phone call from a person that I'd known for a long time, and he knew of my affiliation with Bigfoot. And this guy is a timber cruiser. What he does is he goes out and he marks proposed logging sites for a lumber company. And he called me. This guy has spent 27 years basically hanging ribbon lines for log cuts. And his specialty is to work off the rivers and the tributaries and the salmon creeks, with leaving the variance there where the loggers have to stop and leave a grain belt down to the rivers. So he spent his life doing this, basically. And one day he's out doing this in some really impenetrable area, and he comes upon this ground nest. And in all the years of him doing this, he'd never come across anything like this. It looked like a giant bird's nest. You'll see pictures later. But it looked like a giant bird's nest, like just a big bed. And then as he's looking around, he discovers 4 more in this area. And he's just perplexed, and he actually got a little spooked. So he came out of the woods, and he called me. I happened to be up here at our place, and he goes, "Hey, I want to get DNR and myself and a couple guys from your organization come out and look at this." So we did, and that's how the nest study started. So we're going to give a presentation today on these nests. To date, we found and documented 24 of these nests, and you're going to learn a lot more about them today.
Okay, just real quick, obviously, this is kind of more me. Obviously, I'm part of the Olympic Project. My name's Shane Corson. I also run a podcast called Monster X Radio. And I'm also part of Project Zoo Book. Amy Boo out of Ohio created a project called Project Zoo Book. And it's basically a think tank of academic individuals and researchers talking about Sasquatch. We have wildlife biologists in this group, as do we in the Olympic Project, but we also have zookeepers and whatnot, and we talk about Sasquatch and the correlation with known animals. So I just wanted to give a mention to that. Let's see. Okay, as Derek said, a continuing ground nest study, and that's what we're going to be talking about. I have this slide in there; it's kind of a funny one, but basically, we've been talking about these nests for years at different symposiums, on podcasts, on TV. And everybody's got an opinion, right? Opinions are like, you know what. And so, basically, when you got these nests, we've been working with them specifically for 6 years now. So we're pretty well educated and versed on what they are not. But everybody, especially online, has an opinion. I've heard some crazy stuff, what they are. And so it's kind of like, blind people feeling an elephant. Everybody's got a different opinion, except nobody's touching the nest but us. All right. Okay, here's a little background on the nest. To date, we have found 24 different nests in this area. 24. 2 of those nests are bush nests. Okay, so we have 22 ground nests, and then we have 2 miniature, what we call practice nests. This area has not been logged in 50 plus years. I think that's key. It's 2.5 miles behind a lock gate and way off trail. There are no trails to this place. This is bushwhacking through very, very thick huckleberry, sometimes over 8-9 feet off the ground. And you're crawling at times to get in this area. It's usually always wet. You guys know the Olympics. It's always wet. It's rugged. It's hard to find impressions. And so, and they're predominantly, they're all made out of huckleberry. Huckleberry from, small to over, 2 inches, in diameter. Over a foot in depth. They're massive, anywhere from about 4 feet across to, 8.5 feet across. Let's see, size of the nest. You get into this area, and you'll have a group of nests coming on a finger, coming off a ridge line. I think that's key. Derek, do you want to talk a little bit about the formation of the nest?
You bet. First off, I met out there, myself and one of the people in the Olympic Project, and we met with a representative from the timber company, and we also met with 2 representatives from the Department of Natural Resources. And we're all standing there looking at these, and a combined, amount of years from myself, and I'm a wilderness guy here, and I've been an avid hunter my entire life. The guy James that was with me, the same thing, 40 years in the woods. Two DNR guys, and a guy that's been doing this for 27 years, and not one of us had ever encountered anything like this. So that's kind of how astounding it was, just looking at these nests. And so I immediately, and the cool thing is the timber company was so enamored by what we were looking at, they actually had held off logging for 6 years because they were getting ready to log. But they wanted to get to the bottom of it just like we did because it's such an anomaly. So it's just really compelling to look at these things.
Well, real quick. And so they were so enamored, they gave us keys to this lock gate to basically research this area for 5 years. Now, we're over that time limit, but they've extended it because they're not going to log this area right now. They don't have the permits, and they got a lot of other stuff going on. So, and that's good, because we've had a lot of interesting activity occur in the last couple of years. And so, yeah.
So real quick, so I just went instantly online and started looking at known North American ground nests, what makes a nest. And I'll tell you what, we have just exhausted ourselves trying to figure out what could possibly be doing this. One of the things that we do in the Olympic Project, we don't call anything Sasquatch. We just go to work on trying to figure out what it could be before we even open that door. And these nests are so anomalous. And then finally, after about 3 days of doing this, I was able to match the nests online. And they're mountain gorilla nests, or that's what they're exactly like. Dimensions, depth, thickness of the foliage, the arrangement, the whole 9 yards. And what Shane talked about a second ago, that 22 of these nests we have found on the ground and documented. 2 of them were in a bush, which was really a head scratcher, until I learned that apes teach their young ones how to build ground nests. They do a practice nest in a bush. And we found and documented 2 of those too, so.
Yeah, okay, so the way these nests are structured, basically, like I was saying, you have a ridge line, and you have these fingers or plateaus that come off this ridge line with a seasonal salmon creek. Certain times of the year, that salmon will stack up. They're so thick you could walk across them. You guys know all the rivers up here, very thick. We think that these nests are being made in the months of late February to March. In fact, I'll talk about this a little bit later, but Todd Hill in the back here, who's part of the Olympic Project, and I stumbled across one in the making and almost set our eyes on what made it. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But we have collected hair samples. They match primate unknown. I know people are sick of hearing that. That's just the truth. Cindy Dosen of Homini Enigma looked at them visually. So did Dr. Jeff Meldrum, Iowa State University. And they do not match anything. They don't match any bear hair, or which would be the likely culprit. No, they don't match. They don't have a medulla. Bear has a medulla, which is like the centerpiece to the hair. You think of it like the pencil and the lead. There is no sneaking into this area, like I said before. The huckleberry is impenetrable. Very thick, but you have multiple nests. So these nests aren't 22 in one spot. You got a finger with 4 or 7 nests, and you got another maybe 170 yards away. Up on another finger is another 7 nests, and then so on and so on. Why this area? This area has not been logged in 50 plus years. It's very difficult to get to. No humans are going into this area but us. There is no shortage of food. These nests are made out of huckleberry, and I think that's very important, and I'll be talking about that. The huckleberry plays a huge part, but there is no shortage of food in this area. All sorts of berries and ungulates, and you know, if I wanted to be out there, I can live off this land pretty easy. If you want to stay hidden, this is the spot for sure. Real quick, these are not the only nests, historically speaking, that have ever been found. Okay, I can tell you right now, there have been other nests found. You can look in the late Dr. John Bindernagel's book. He talks about nests. Robert Alley, who's here, he's probably shown some of his books in Ring Coast Sasquatch. He talks about nests. In fact, so there's lots of examples of nests being found, including those who's familiar with the Patterson-Gimlin film of 1967. Yeah, right. Well, I know you are, Robert. But yeah. So in 1967, Lyle Laverty was a timber surveyor, or worked for the timber company down there in Bluff Creek, and he came across a nest the same year as the Patterson-Gimlin film. He came across a large nest that he describes. Daniel Perez interviewed him for his Bigfoot newsletter, and he has, I think it's on YouTube, an interview with him talking about a large ground nest that he came across. It was massive, and it's a mirror image of what we found. So there is a correlation there with a Sasquatch sighting and a nest being found. And like I said, lots of examples of nests being found, just never in this number and never studied.
The cool thing about these nests, real quick, is they were all situated, well, all except for the last one that was recently found, along the same ridge line. And if you guys hike or off-trail hike, you know a ridge line runs, and then you'll have fingers shooting out from that main ridge in succession. So on this particular ridge line, it runs north and south. The fingers all come out, and the fingers are facing west, which is important because that's where an animal that's nesting there or bedding there or whatever is going to have the most sunlight for warmth. So it's a western-facing ridge, but this ridge line runs like this, and all these fingers stick out. And so all these nests were all found within 100 to 120 yards exactly of the river down below. And when we surmised these nests were made, and we did this because we took huckleberry and watched it age. So we knew about how many months it had been since we discovered them, or they were discovered, and how much it had been, how much degradation had happened in the foliage. So we knew about the right time. So right when these nests were made, it was an extremely heavy salmon year down in that river. Like Shane said, you could almost walk across them. Getting into these fingers, like Shane said, it was impenetrable. I mean, you have to dive through brush, crawl under stuff, and then you get to these nests and there's escape routes right off these finger ridges right down to the river. Perfect place for a large primate to go down, eat, and come up and sleep without anything messing with it. I mean, like he said, you cannot sneak into this area.
And then also the tree canopy is very thick up top, so you can't, we tried to fly drones and stuff in there. Cliff Barrickman came out with us and it didn't work. So you have not only you have the ground cover, the surrounding area where it's like impenetrable and you can't see the area, you can't see from above either. And here's an example. We got, there's Chevrolet comes in Montana out. She's about 5'7". There's James Milligan of the Olympic Project and Dr. Jeff Meldrum. You can see how high some of this, I mean, these guys are like 6'2", 6'3". It's very tall and it's very thick. And an example, so, caution, trees obscuring view. Well, so when you get down to these nests, you can't see them from afar. You have to literally walk into this area to see the destruction. I compare it to like a house. You can see the outside of the walls of the house, like you can see the outside of huckleberry. But until you open that door and walk in, until you walk into the nest area, you don't know what's going on inside there. You can't see, it's impenetrable. So it's perfect. All the damage is contained to the nest area. There's no damage outside of it. And so when you walk into this area, it's all the huckleberry boughs are broken off. All of them are broken off, as far as you can see in this area. And all the leaves have been plucked off the huckleberry branches. Plucked off, in some cases, piles of huckleberry leaves were piled up or put into the nest. Here's some of the tree and bush damage. You can see here, either with this stuff, there's no claw marks, no teeth marks. This stuff was twisted, peeled off, or broken off completely. And it took something, in a lot of cases, with a lot of strength. Oh, sorry, I went too many. Yeah, just examples of some of the damage. And this top left one, this is an example right here. All the leaves are literally plucked off. And the way, I'll get to it in a little bit, the way the nests are positioned, in a lot of cases, I think some of these branches were twisted or plucked clean so that you have a direct view of the next nest over. From every nest at that time, you can see every single other nest. So there's intelligence, okay? If there's a bush there, I can't see this nest, I can't see this individual sitting in it, or whatever. But by moving that branch or peeling the leaves off, you can get a direct view of it. Okay. Talk a little bit about the, sure.
So this is basically the first one that we started studying. And what you're looking at here, this one was about 6 feet by 6 feet or so. This is all huckleberry. It's not quite woven, but it is all intelligently placed, and it is consistently 1 foot to 1.5 foot thick like a mattress. And when we walked upon them for the first time, they were just depressed, you know, as if something with a lot of weight was laying in them. And it's just, you actually, because we found so many, and we did DNA testing on several, a couple of them that we did not do DNA testing on, we laid in just to feel what it would feel like. And it's just like you're laying on a mattress. But you're insulated up off the ground with 1.5 foot of foliage, you know, so you retain your body warmth, which is the same thing that mountain gorillas do. That's why they build this, just so they can maintain their body warmth. But yeah, they are, go ahead, Shane. You know, they look like a big bird from Sesame Street made a nest. You know, they're like that size. They look like giant bird's nests on the ground. Yeah, there's a can of school right there. And we found them in just this, the primary nest site, I think there was, what, 7?
Yeah.
Yeah, so 7 of them, like Shane said, you could see from one nest, because the huckleberry had been stripped, you could see, lay in one nest or stand in one nest and look through to the next nest, and then you could see the next nest. And they were formed. There's an illustration coming up later on this one particular, we call it the primary nest site, or the main nest site. There were 7 nests there, including a practice nest in a bush. And one of the people in the Olympic project, his name is Tom Baker, he was literally a Top Gun fighter pilot instructor, top military guy. And when he saw the illustration that we drew of the primary nest site, he goes, man, it looks militaristic, the way that it was laid out. The biggest nest was right at the point of the ridge, and right at the foot of that were 2 rocks that are back on our table back there, and you'll see pictures of them when they were fresh. But these 2 rocks were just laying right at this lookout big nest. And we picked the rocks up, and they were scored as if they'd been beaten on again and again and again and again. They weren't implanted in the ground; they were just set there. But it just has a military, like a guard shack feel to it, you know, with the primary one being out on point, looking down into the ravine. This picture, this is shoot, probably a good year. That's what's left. The nest wasn't constructed out of broken or old branches. Every nest is constructed with fresh huckleberry. And this is an example of what it looks like, you know, I think this was like a year later.
As you see pictures, they are degrading to a degree because we've been studying them for 6 years now. And they're almost gone now, just, you know, the forest.
Yeah, and here's not the greatest pictures, but examples of 2 of the bush nests. They were constructed very similar to what was on the ground, in close proximity to the ground nest. And once again, you can have a direct view from a larger nest to look at these. So that's very interesting stuff there. I constructed, there's Cliff Bergman laying in one of the nests, one of the larger ones actually. Huge depression in it. It's hard to, the pictures don't do it justice, but basically I reconstructed a nest for the Kelso Longview event, Sasquatch Fest. This is currently down in Cliff Bergman's museum down in Boring, Oregon. You can go down there and check it out and get a view of what they looked like originally. So I, along with Derek Randalls, constructed one of these nests to show people, you know, the sheer size of these things and the amount of work it took. Derek and I did an experiment a couple of years back where we deconstructed nests, right? Taking samples. We wanted to build one to see how long it would take us. Between both of us, it took us between 40 and 45 minutes, and that's collecting all the material in the area and then going another 20 to 25 feet away, collecting more material and bringing it. See, it wasn't just like something just grabbed what was around itself to grab and make these nests constructed. they had to travel like 10, 15 feet away. Some of the branches we discovered in the nest were taken from 20 feet away and then brought back, transported, and then constructed into the nest. Dr. Meldrum, well, we learned a lot by building one. I learned more about building a nest than I did, by deconstructing one. It takes time, it takes thought, it takes intelligence, it takes something with an opposable thumb. Yeah, absolutely. And when we deconstructed one with Dr. Meldrum out of Idaho State University, that's where Meldrum's from, many are familiar with him. He knows that some of the huckleberry boughs were pushed into the ground, almost like a stake, like a frame, and then the huckleberries kind of formulated around these ground stakes. So something with intelligence constructed these nests, there's no doubt. Okay, I'll be your huckleberry. Why huckleberry? Well, leaves can be, obviously could be a food source, but a lot of primates get their water from leaves. A lot of the lowland gorilla, cross-river gorilla, they get a lot of their water from the leaves. But I was talking to a good friend of ours, Sasquatch Metrics. You can find him on social media, and we've been talking more about him. He had asked me, these nests are all made out of huckleberry. And yes, that's the predominant plant out there besides salal and whatnot, but is there a medicinal purpose to the huckleberry? And I said, I have no idea. So we did some research and come to find out that doctors used to give women a concoction of sugar and huckleberry leaves after pregnancy to regain their strength. And one of our running hypotheses when it comes to these nests is that this is a possible birthing area, a possible nursery. And when I found these piles of huckleberry leaves piled up, I'm thinking, is that a food source? Is it a medicinal purpose? I don't know. If Sasquatch is making these nests, which I heavily lean to, based on a lot of stuff. It's not just nests, we got a lot of stuff. But the medicinal purpose with the huckleberries were fascinating to me. And these nests are not being made every year. I don't think Sasquatch is making nests. I think they can bed down, they can find shelter. These nests were made for a period of time for a purpose, in my opinion. For a reason, absolutely. And when you look at the medicinal purposes of huckleberry and some of the other purposes of the plants in this area, it starts to paint a picture. My little thing I kind of coined, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel here, but I like to refer to Sasquatch as Ridge-8. Bad Panjo, I'm sorry, big deal. But I really do, ridges play a huge part in how Sasquatch move around when you have that vantage point. And all my experiences have happened usually below a ridge. Okay, you can talk about Sturt.
Yeah, so this was the extent of my artistic ability right here. I apologize. But this basically just gives you an idea of the primary nest site, the original one that was found, we were led to by the timber surveyor. And this was the arrangement that illustrates where the two knocking rocks were found right on the tip. So if you can imagine, that line right there is really the top of the finger ridge, and then it's a very drastic grade right down to the river. And when we got there, there was evidence of just like, if you saw a rhinoceros go off a ledge and just slide down to the river. Just huge slides coming off this finger ridge. So this is the first one we investigated, and then what we did is we just got our people together, and over the last 6 years, actually probably 3.5, 4 years that it took to explore this entire ridge complex right there, we methodically gridded out all these fingers and worked our way and explored the entire ridge, and that's how we came up with the 22 original ground nests. Each finger that came out would contain a nest, or 2 or 3, and then we go to the next one, we'd find a couple more, and the pattern was just uncanny. You get right to the fingers, and there would be the nests. So this right here, these are the rocks. This is the moment we picked them up when we found them. And as you can see, they've been beaten together many times. And so, if I was going to hypothesize, I would think that the big one there on the point, maybe messaging one across the ravine or saying, hey, there could be a human in the area, they use the rocks to communicate, they do something with them. But they have a history of being beaten together, which was uncanny. So this right here, this is one picture of a gorilla nest. This is a picture of one of our nests. But just some illustrations here of how they lay in them, what they do. Talk about that. So, let's see one now. And actually, when you look at the nest, it makes sense that you'd be laying down something similar with the heavy impression.
something similar to how you see these gorillas laying down. Some illustrations I have found online these are actual drawings while in the field from primatologists and whatnot. Now we don't have a tree nest, but the formation here is very, very similar. These are gorillas, very similar to what the formation that we're working on now, or formations we've been working on looking at. Here's another example. I like this one a lot because you have your different, you got your kind of like the point nest that's very similar. On the outskirts here, you have a lot of the smaller males protecting the females and the little ones that are in the middle, and that's what we're dealing with. Yep.
So something else that was just crazy is, as you're doing gorilla research, and I'm going to tell you right now, in the Olympic project, there's a bunch of different thought processes. We're not all like ape, human, whatever. Shane is at where he's at. I lean way more to the human side, that these things are at least part human or something like that, just because of their level of intelligence. Shane has his opinions. Everybody in the Olympic project has their own opinions, and we welcome all of that. We're not saying this is this and that is that. But one of the things that struck me with the nest configuration is, as I was doing the research on mountain gorillas, they would have a primary nest site, like what we had and we're working on. And then they would say, off on a next ridge or two, you would find a giant nest where there was a lookout where the main big guy gorilla would go. And that is exactly what we found. The largest nest we found was a ridge over, and it was huge. And primary or solo by itself, right on the end of a ridge, just a gigantic nest. It's the one that Cliff was laying in the pictures before. So just the similarities were just mind-boggling once I started getting into the gorilla studies and looking deep into that.
Well, we'll zoom through these. I'm sure many of you guys have seen bear beds and know what they look like. They do kind of they can push material. It's kind of like almost like a little nest. But bears generally do not collect huckleberry boughs from over 8 feet off the ground to a foot off the ground and transport them and then put stakes in the ground and weave or formulate. They don't do that. And so we've been, a lot of people, you're dealing with bear beds or bear. How many times?
Absolutely not bear beds.
No. Not remotely close. We didn't find tons and tons of fecal matter, like bears do. Look at bear. So, some of the other things have been called deer beds. Wood rats, they're wood rats, but I've been up and down California, Oregon, Washington. I run into these things all the time. Unless it's like a 6 to 8 foot tall wood rat, I don't think it's a wood rat. And you find feces. You find wood rat feces everywhere, and there'd be a small, really heavy urine, ammonia smell. They don't have that. I don't think Sasquatch poops where they sleep, personally. I think they're smarter than that. Some of the other things that have come up lately, they're eagle nests. Heard that somewhere, and I'll be honest, I had to laugh because there's been no feathers found, no bird poop. You can't get through the canopy. Eagles will very rarely build a nest on the ground. But this canopy is so thick, it would make it defy logic. And there's multiple nests of different sizes. That was a new one to me for a loop. I want to talk a little bit about this. Here's Dr. Meldrum. When he came out several years ago, we collected eDNA, environmental DNA samples. We collected material, the actual nesting material, and then soil samples, and we sent off to a certain guy. I'm not going to mention it. I'll be nice. A certain scientist here in North America, pretty well known in the Bigfoot community. And we made some mistakes on our end with these samples. For example, Jeff left them in his freezer too long, so they degraded. We went out of our way to not contaminate them. We videoed the process, we covered up, masked up, as much as we could. Instead, eventually the samples made it to this individual. And I'll be honest with you, it was a pain in the butt trying to get the answer to what we were dealing with. He was supposed to do some work on this in this new lab he was setting up. It's a new eDNA lab. He was kind of new to the process. Well, brand new. And I'll be honest with you, it took us a long time to get the answers. Derek was on the phone. We were doing a presentation at Beachfoot, and he was calling this guy up, and finally he answered the phone, and he gave us, I got the known animals, I got bear, I got this, I got that. I got human. And so we ended the phone call. And I said, Derek, well, what percentage human? And he said, good question. So Derek calls this guy back, and he comes back 100%. But they were degraded and this and that. So we never really got a solid answer. And there's a lot, I've heard this individual on podcasts And quite honestly, I'll be honest with you, I don't know if the guy ever even looked at the stuff. I'm straight up being honest. Because we never saw any paperwork, never saw an inch of it. And apparently on one podcast, I heard him say, because he moved universities, that he's not sure they even kept the paperwork. So I don't know if this guy ever looked at this stuff. He said there was a certain species of animal in there. We know for a fact there's not, so that, yeah. He said there was a certain species of animal in this area. We know for a fact it's not in this area. So he's either just mistaken or he's full of it. And I lean towards the latter.
And so with the DNA, we've been involved in a few studies. We were involved in the Ketchum study, which was a huge study. And I lean what Melba came up with, which is what I believe. I think like a chimpanzee runs almost 99% human on the mitochondrial side of the DNA, which is the female side. A chimp is almost human in DNA. Now, if you were to put a chimp next to a human, I mean, there's no distinct, it's a chimp. It looks like a chimp, it doesn't look like a human. I mean, a little bit. But if you were to like shave a Sasquatch and put it next to, say, a linebacker for the Seahawks, they're gonna look almost alike. You know, the hands look the same, the feet look the same. So in my brain, they're gonna run on the mitochondrial side even closer to human than a chimpanzee would. So I believe with these studies, just like Melba Ketchum said, and in her studies that came out, the mitochondrial side of a Sasquatch, in my opinion, does run human. It's the nuclear side, the male side, that is unknown. And so, yes, in so many samples that the Olympic Project over the last however many years has put forward, human comes in, even in situations where there is no human contamination. So to me, it's just a slam dunk. On the mitochondrial side, they run human, in my opinion.
And here's some of the hair collected. I spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours collecting hair. Painstaking process, but well worth it. We did get obviously some known animal in there. In fact, one of the hairs that was found was a guard hair from a raccoon that I was told was, when it was in that nest, was dead. It was post-mortem, so it was dead. So there was a dead raccoon in one of those nests at one time, and I do believe that Sasquatch does partake in raccoon. You know, and speaking of roadside crossings, this is something I want to bring up because I think it's important. The number one way us humans see a Sasquatch is from a roadside crossing. Pardon that makes sense, right? Because more people are driving than in the woods hiking and whatnot. So you know, Sasquatch goes from point A to point B. I did a cross-country trip a couple years back. Went from Washington all the way to Kentucky and then Tennessee, and I noticed just tons and tons of roadkill, especially through like Montana, Wyoming, Oregon, Washington, even Kentucky. Loads of roadkill, all different species of animal. The most common by far was raccoon. And so, why does Sasquatch cross the road? Well, I think, you know, they're opportunistic, and I think they're following, you know, walking along the road looking for roadkill. Lots of reports, especially up in the Clackamas area, of Sasquatch carrying a deer or picking up a raccoon. So I think a lot of these roadside crossings are Sasquatch looking for roadkill and crossing the road, and that's why we see them. You know, I think that's a good chance. And so getting back to the hair has been looked at visually. Been no DNA on it because the hair was older. You need like a follicle really to look at the DNA. I know they got some new methods now, but they visually looked at. It had red pigmentation under a microscope, which is interesting because a lot of the sightings you hear about these auburn or red-colored Sasquatches, you know. And so I thought that was really interesting with the red pigmentation in there. Lacks medulla, so pretty much rules out everything in the woods here. And it matched other samples collected from, you know, Washington, Oregon, Alaska, that are what people would call unknown. Just some of the paperwork done on it. Hair analysis done by Cindy Dosen with the conclusion, you know, unknown samples, primates. Here's more underneath the microscope. Let's go, skipping forward here. Yeah, just some of the paperwork I got back. Hair to be of unknown nature, which I think is fascinating. Let's see, okay.
So Heather,
Okay, so one of the things we want to talk about, this nest area that we're working on, the nests are just one piece of the evidence we've gathered there. So back in the back of the room back here is Chris Spencer. He's a member of the Olympic Project and one of two of our main audio guys for years now. So Chris and Shane and Todd Hale, they go back and they put out long-term audio. We have multiple long-term audio units out in this nesting area. And in a little bit, you're going to hear some of the results over the years out there, and you're going to hear some very recent ones. you can listen to them, you can tell me what you think it is, but some of them are pretty damn creepy. But not only the audio that's coming out of there right now is incredibly exciting. There's also been a multitude of footprints that we found in casts in the area. I have personally seen something out there with my wife that I cannot explain going into the area, and we would run out of time, or I would tell you that whole story. But there is a lot of evidence out there beside the nest, and there's also a history of sightings and encounters out in this area.
Put this one in that one.
Yeah, there's some, this was an adjacent area that Derek and I casted some impressions. Cliff Bergman got a hold of a report not too far away from this area where a kid was throwing rocks in the water, looked up, something else was throwing rocks in there, and it was apparently two Sasquatch that took off running. You can see the kids, he peeled out there pretty quick. We found, this I believe is bear scat, but there was a large impression on top of that. That could be Sasquatch scat, I don't know, but something stood on it. This is where the kids saw it, which would have been over here. So examples of that. Moving forward, key characteristics of the nest. We went over most of those, so I'll skip forward. I get a lot of people coming to me, especially on, for my podcast. Well, I found a nest. It was right next to the trail, or I found a nest that was next to my house, and I just don't think Sasquatch is that silly. Or, we find these things all the time. So I think Sasquatch, like when he says there, I may not be a very smart Sasquatch, but I know how to hide a nest. So in the hide and seek champion. So. February 2020, I'll cover this real quick. I was out with Todd Hale, Derek and I, a few weeks prior in January, went out and we were looking for new nests or old nests. And we came across a few that, in this adjacent ravine, that appeared to be older nests. So we got a little excited. And we covered a good portion of that area. So several weeks later, Todd Hale and I went out, and before we set up our camp, I decided to take Todd Hale up to this ravine to look at, where we're going to be looking at the next day. It's getting into the evening hours. Well, as we go through the huckleberry, we make it to this new ravine. I hear something moving around. And I said, shh. And it was big. I hear sticks breaking. It was big. And I said, shh, quiet, quiet. And I'm thinking bear. Automatically, I'm thinking bear. We run into bear occasionally. Bear or some big ungulate. But it's really loud. And Todd had fallen down on the ground, so he's cussing. And he gets up, and the thing about Todd Hale is, he's a motocross guy his whole life, he's a construction worker, and he listens to loud music, so he's half deaf. He's deaf. He could hear this thing. And I could hear this thing that's coming at us. I couldn't see it. It's still a little bit low below us, but I could hear this thing approaching us, and then it stopped. And it retreated and went down into the ravine, and we listened for a couple minutes as it circled up behind us. And I got a little weirded out. I said, I don't want to be down here. I want the higher elevation. Let's backtrack. Yeah, guns drawn. Get back up top, and we heard it moved a little bit, and then it stopped. Todd's like, let's go check out where this thing was originally. So we go back down in there, and I'm telling you, the mountain huckleberry broken again. I knew we had found a brand new nest, and we had found something making it, and it was in the month of the tail end of February, which is the time of year we think these things are being made every 4 to 5 years in this area, possibly, and in the month of February and March. Almost got to see this thing, but we did not. However, we did find two hand impressions. One of the casts didn't come out that great. We had our good friend Cliff Bergman come out to help us with this project. He's been helping us out here and there. That's kind of here's my artwork. That's kind of the basic shape of the left hand. I don't think I have a picture of the right here. But Cliff came out and casted it, took about 15 pounds of plastic. It was on a slope below a fallen tree, a fallen log. What's interesting was, this is where we think this thing came down below us and went back up the hill. So it pushed itself up the hill and circled up behind us.
And the cast is on our table if anybody would like to look at it.
Yeah, and there's a couple of, anyways, let me get back to this. So we got that casted, but that was a couple of days later. The interesting thing was, when we went into this area the next day with Derek, Todd and I actually backed out of this area and decided we were just going to let it be. We'll come check this out tomorrow, which we did. Derek drove out, and as we go in there, we're seeing more and more huckleberry, just the amount of sheer devastation. And then we come across this gigantic pile of huckleberry that was starting to be formulated into a nest. It was brand new that day, or that night. We got really excited. And so we weren't going to touch it. We weren't going to mess with it. We were going to leave it alone because we wanted to bring academics in there to collect the samples. I'm not a scientist, so I shouldn't be touching this stuff. Then COVID happened. Yes, that is a hand, yeah.
That gas is on the table.
Yeah, that was cast from that right there.
That one has 6.
No, there's 5. Yeah.
When you look at it.
Yeah, there's you might be looking at the cast little.
Oh, no, that's your drawing.
Oh, I did. That's my artistic, yeah, sorry. It did not have 6.
Like I said, you only have 3.
You know what, I've presented this a couple times, you're the first person that knows. There was a gigantic pile of huckleberry that was being formulated into a nest. So yeah, and then, subsequently, as we lift up the pile, I got a clip out there to help cast, right here, there was a huge pile of huckleberry right here. Underneath that huckleberry was a right foot, like something had step, grabbing stuff. That was underneath the huckleberry. Wasn't on top, wasn't on the side. You would not have seen it had we not moved the huckleberry. And Todd Hill found another nice impression not too far away. I think we casted 4 or 5 different impressions in that area, not including the hand cast. There was another partial in this area, hand or fingers. The measurements on the cast themselves, 14 inches. And if you're familiar with Patty, she was about 14 inches as well. So we're consistently finding these 14-inch tracks out there, which screams, if it is a Sasquatch, possibly a female. Okay, let's scoot forward. Let's see, long-term audio, there's Chris Spencer there. We've been recording audio in this area for a long time now, but specifically for the last year, with the LIM project and the help of Squatcher Metrics, which you can find them on YouTube or Facebook and Instagram. We started working on, there's some of his stuff there. He's fantastic. We did this Olympic Project Nest Area long-term recorder study, where some of our long-term units Chris has set up and deployed, they'll record for over 30 days. And now we can do up to 60 days because of a new endeavor Chris is partaking in. But we've been documenting specifically Chris and Wes with Squatcher Metrics. For over a year, all the animals in this area that we can recognize visually. We're not just recording this stuff and going listening to it. You visually put it up on a spectrograph, like through like Sonic or Audacity, and we visually look at this stuff and compare it to known animals. And I'm going to kind of brush through this. If anybody wants a copy of this, PDF, I can send it to you in an email. We don't, only send it out to people interested. I don't care to put it on Facebook or any of that. Lots of animals, species recorded. There's some of for some of the mammals, some of the bird species. There's the numbers with the number of vocalizes, species-wise, and then you move on here. You got the percentage of nights recorded, via the unknown recordings here, and we do have our fair share of unknowns. And I'm going to keep moving forward here. We're going to run out of time.
We want to play them for you. We don't want to
Okay. Let's see here. Let's start. These were recorded after the new nest discovery. These were recorded in February, March, and April. Some of you guys probably heard these. Let's see. There we go. Turn it up a little bit. Possible whoop. Keep going. There's some better ones.
Can we get more by?
Working on it.
Okay.
Technical difficulties.
Then I'm going to keep moving forward. You can skip forward.
At conferences, this is like a curse sometimes. We're trying to play audio. Sometimes it's wall to wall, and for whatever reason, it's not doing that right now. but I'll go ahead and while you guys are figuring that out. So we've taken the last 6 years of this area, and we have, like I said, we've gridded out this entire ridge complex, and then in the last
That's better.
Okay.
Thanks for your patience, by the way. We'll get this right here. Just bear with us.
Yeah. All right. So real quick, these are some of the newer ones from just this last year. This is Chris's hard work putting these together. Just some of the new ones we recorded in this area. We've got a lot of grunts in this area, a lot of grunts. This is Luke. You play next one.
Next one.
Possible loops. Okay, next one. Next one, please. That's a low to high low. There's one or two more. We're gonna run out of time here. Yeah, play Chimp Pit, and then we'll skip ahead. We call this Chimp Pit for a reason.
Which one?
Yeah, that one right there. Oh no, excuse me, up above that. Sorry, I'm breaking my neck here. So basically, we're fast forwarding here, but basically on that one there, you have multiple individuals, and then you have this big voice coming in, and they all stop. And visually comparing that to a chimpanzee is very close. Okay, some of the new stuff we come across, brand new huckleberry brakes in this area or twists. These are peeled off. We found quite a lot of them this past year. Next slide, please. Some of the impressions we've come across. And along, these were right next to these huckleberry brakes. I'm going to go ahead and play that one. We have this cast. This is a 3D app that Todd Hale had on his phone. And this actually looks better than the cast does. And so that's something we're going to be implementing, not just casting it, but doing these 3D images. We're still playing with it. But you have the heel, and you got toes up here, you have the arch, it almost looks like a mid-tarsal brake.
This is how old?
Shoot, like a month.
Yeah. Recent cast.
Yeah, recent cast, and that's a 3D image of it. It looks better than the cast does, and so we were so impressed, and thank God Todd had that app on his phone. We're still playing with it. This isn't perfect. We can do a way better job. But to have those two elements, I think it's going to be important down the road here in the future. Because you can send this anyway. You can't send a cast anywhere, but you can send this, and people can visually look at it. So yeah, there's your heel, arch, toes. So pretty cool. Well, that's that. Let's skip here. Okay, basically the conclusion is we are dealing with unknown nests, what's making them, unknown behavior, and unknown hair. So we have a plethora of data available at our hands, and it's all pointing towards something unknown, or at least unknown to science and the world. So yeah.
And so moving forward, we're still in this primary nest site. We're doing like you said, we still got the long-term audio going out there. We do monitor it, but it's really tenuous to figure out if you go in there a lot, don't go in there a lot. You know, you want to research the area, but you don't want to push them out. When Todd and Shane came across the one building the nest, if that's what it was, after that happened, it was just like vacant. The thing didn't come back. It was just like, we're out of here. So it's really hard to know. You know, we are all amateurs. You know, we're woodsmen, but we're amateurs. We're not scientists. We have some scientists that work with us, but we do things to the limit of our ability. And we're still learning. We're learning every day. You know, should we put cameras in there? Should we not put cameras in there? Should we go in once a year, once a month? And we're still trying to figure all that out. But moving forward, like I was alluding to a few minutes ago, in the last 2.5 years, we've decided to look at adjacent ravines that have the same characteristics, which would be a north-south ridge, a salmon-bearing stream, and western-facing fingers. And in this particular area, there's about 3 locations that are very similar. And so we had decided to start exploring these other ones and gridding them out like we did in the primary nest site to see if this, whatever we're looking at, is repeatable. And that's why we were so excited when the new nest was stumbled upon being made, because that told us that it wasn't just a one-time anomaly, but it seems to be more of a 5 to 6 year pattern. And the thing that's really striking is in the primary nest site, if you were to walk in there now, you can't really tell anything happened. And it's almost as if they wait long enough until the forest heals itself before they'll come back in and start making nests again. It's just shows of intelligence, in my opinion. Because the devastation that Shane was talking about earlier, when we were finding and documenting the 22 original nests, we got to a point where we could get on a high point on these fingers and we could scan the forest and just see broken huckleberry and sometimes a large tree. And we would hike over there and lo and behold, we'd find a couple nests. So we got good at identifying them. But it takes about 6 years for the nest to degrade completely and for the forest to heal itself. And now it seems as if they're active in there again. So we're learning a lot, and it's a really fun study. And thanks for entertaining us and letting us tell our story. But we do have a couple minutes left, and we just want to see if you guys had any questions.
So do you feel the area you've been studying that they may abandon it and then come back to that area further down the road, not sure how long?
So her question is, do we feel that they may abandon this area and then come back later? And yes, that's exactly what I personally think, a 5 to 6 year rotation. So in this particular area, I think that they use the entire area, which is vast. And I think that just for anonymity and to stay hidden, that they'll be in different areas and then come back through. You know, I just think they're smart enough to know they're only going in this area for 5 or 6 years. The thing that was remarkable about this particular event 6 years ago in May is we had one of the heaviest salmon runs I've ever seen in this area. You could literally walk across the fish. It was just choked with protein. And so we're looking at the salmon runs, the volume of the salmon runs as compared to the possible nest finds and things like that. Yes, I do think it's a cycle.
Just want to add that rainfall seems to play a part partially. When their nests were originally discovered, it was a really wet year. 2020 up there or in this area was a really wet year. And I think based on the audio we're collecting and recording, that they definitely monitor and come through the area and spend some time in the area, but they're not making nests weekly or whatnot. They're definitely utilizing the area. If you stay in the area too long, you will make an impression and you will be found, you will be spotted, because you got to eat, you got to move. You know, bears travel, deer, everything travels, and they can only eat so much in one spot before they have to move on. And if you stay in one area too long, the damage will be very obvious. So it's an area they definitely, I mean, some of these recordings are, you know, February, March, and even April, which I didn't really get to play, but they're brand new. We have a ton of audio, a ton of audio of known animals, you know, and then some really cool unknown stuff that, to me, is mind-boggling.
Go ahead.
So I just have a question about if when you're out in the forest, if you feel the energy change while you're there. Because when
question is, do we feel the energy change when we're out in the forest? Yeah, and I think that could be attributed to a few different things. As far as me, personally, I think my senses are fairly keen because I'm in the woods a lot. And even if I'm around an elk or a cougar or a bear, sometimes I'll sense its presence before I see it. And I can think several times I've been hiking down a trail and I just instantly feel like I'm being watched. And I'll sit there and I'll look over and there'll be like an elk staring at me. And I think that the more people today are city, or they don't go in the woods a whole lot. And so I think those senses get very dull. But the more you're in the woods, the more acute your senses become. And that is a real thing. And I don't know what to attribute that to, but that is real.
Yeah, one of the comparisons I like with that is that Derek, you're an avid hunter and hiker and all that. If you're in a closed room by yourself, sitting on a chair with your back to the door, and somebody walks into that room, you just know someone's in that room. You can feel them. So it's just like the barometric pressure changes. It's weird, but you just know someone's in that room. Even when you spend enough time in the woods, you kind of can do that. You can walk in areas and feel stuff. It's pretty natural. Yeah.
And one more thing that's super interesting that I've done for basically since 1985, since I started doing this, is animals, forest animals, and I think even Sasquatch, once you as a human being become predictable, you become safer. And I did an experiment for about 5 years, honestly, to where I would hike the same trail a few times a week, wearing the same clothes, same backpack, same stick, same time of day. And over the 5 years, and I actually really did this, over those 5 years in succession, I would see more and more and more animals because they were used to seeing me out there, and it was predictable. They're like, oh, there's that guy again. And they've seen me, I haven't tried to hurt them, and so they've relaxed. And so the number of deer that I saw and bear just climbed in a 5-year period. Once you become predictable and safe, you're going to see more animals, but you have to rinse and repeat, do it until they realize that you're a non-threat. Questions?
Yes.
The one photo you had that had a tree.
Can you speak up a little bit?
The one photo you had a tree.
Uh-huh.
How many of those sites have trees like really close to the nest?
Oh, all of them.
So they're using those for
One of the indicators when we were searching for nests, did everybody hear his question? Okay, he asked in how many of the nest sites have the trees, the larger trees, correct? So that was one of the indicators right there, is we would get up on a high vantage point, and it was really tough in there because it's just impenetrable, but we'd look across the tops, and if we saw a large tree and then huckleberry breaks below it, we just knew there was going to be a nest there. And after 22 of these, we got pretty good, and we would actually key on a large tree and go over and look at it and get in that area. Sometimes you couldn't see over the top of the foliage, but we just go to a large tree in proximity in the same realm, distance from the river. And yeah, so that's exactly how that panned out. Questions?
Do you think they reuse any of their nests, or once you go in and contaminate their area, they go back in and deconstruct and reuse their nests, or?
Well, that's just a matter of opinion. No, I think that once they're there, they're gone. I don't think they come back, or they might come back after a certain span of years. Yeah, well, I don't think they're going to reuse the same nest area. They might, but they do definitely come back to the same area. To us, that we're sure of this in a 5 or 6 year span. Not necessarily the same nest. And gorillas are funny. They'll build a nest and they'll use it for 1 or 2 days, and then they'll never come back to it.
Yeah. And I do, and this is my personal opinion, and I believe others, that these nests weren't made for a one night event. They were made for a spell of time. They were made for a week, maybe longer, maybe shorter. I don't know, but they were made and then vacated, and I don't think anything's going back because it would be, once again, it takes, like Derek said, about 6 years for this area to recover these fingers. But you can move to another ravine 1,000 feet away and start over again, a couple years later. So yeah, I think we're out of time.
Thank you very much.